Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I am Sophie Jaffe.
And I swear we're going to get this thing recorded. At some point today, we've been an hour and a half into trying to get this intro recorded. We lost power.
Electricity, Wi-Fi. We couldn't record another podcast today. Mercury is out of retrograde, but it's still punishing us, apparently.
Been like static on the other recorder. I don't even understand what's going on.
But we're going to get this out to you.
We're committed.
Yeah, we're committed.
And, you know, if you've listened to anything in this podcast, it's about how committed we are to getting this done. So even though we had to take a little space, like we had to get like 20 minutes apart from each other to get back to this place, I feel like that's part of what you sometimes have to do. And that actually speaks to the fact that we're going to listen today to an interview that Sophie did without me, because for what was like 2 weeks about before this interview was recorded.
We were in a vortex.
I was in the Ignited Hero 2.0 launch recording insanity train, and
late nights and
that weekend, like right before it, I pulled like 30-hour work week, and so Sophie, I would say, like, it's not take one for the team. Did you take one for the team? Or was like
I took one for the team, but I felt like sometimes if one of us is feeling super drained, it's better for us not to be on the podcast because the guest can feel that energy. And we've had that before where, you know, one of us is feeling ill or sick or lower energy or lower vibration. And we don't want to bring that to you guys, and we don't want to bring that to our guests. So we decided that this was an appropriate podcast for me to take on my own, especially because it pertains to past eating disordered thinking, being, existing, a story that I've actually never shared, and one that Adi can't really relate to as much. Yes, on the addiction side. Yes, on the shame side, on the way you work with your clients. But this was really just like heart-to-heart conversation between Erin and I, and it was really beautiful. And I hope that all of you can connect to this story that both of us share as two moms in our mid-30s. You know, we both went through similar but different eating, body dysmorphic, disordered, you know, thinking. And we tell the whole story from both of our parts. But I recorded this with her so that Adi could have some space. And that's the point, is at the end of the day, we're in a relationship with you guys and with each other, and we want to bring our A game to all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about how Erin's mission is to actually help people shift their approach to health through looking at things through a different lens. And I feel like that's absolutely the same work that I do with people around addiction and mental health, just not around eating quite as much. And, you know, self-love can be so hard for people sometimes. It's such an easy concept, you know, hey, don't focus on all the labels and the things that have happened to you in the past that made you feel less than and unworthy. Just focus instead on all the potential. It's easy, but there can be so many signals from the outside world that just make it hard, make you feel less than. You're looking on Instagram, you're whatever, watching a TV show, whatever that is. And so I think it's really great that you guys are walking people through what worked for both of you, in the tools and the techniques and the things that you put in place to actually make that a reality in your life. Because obviously you definitely live a life now that is less focused on restricting what you can do and more focused on the potential of what you will gain.
100%. Yeah, I think it was really fun to dig really deep and go to the deeper layers of both of our situations around food, both of our personal experiences, and going to those deeper layers of really remembering, how did I get from point A to point B though? Like, yes, I love to eat intuitively now. Yes, I move my body intuitively now. But in my early 20s, I was in a really disordered, horrible place. So how did I get from there to here? And that's what we uncover in this episode, which is something I've never shared on this podcast before, and not at length really at all, because I don't have any other platform to be able to go to these links with. Instagram is, you know, a few paragraphs, and to really be able to feel. We both got emotional during this podcast, obviously, because this was a huge part of our lives. And I think everyone, no matter what you've maybe struggled with, can relate to this story.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, especially around food, right? We just talked to Ashley Nell Tipton a little while ago. There's shame around your weight. And now we know this is not now, but and then there's shame around the ways in which you respond in order to try to deal with the weight. And it's like a real catch-22. You have to really find this way of being super, super balanced. And that's not that easy. And now we've got a little daughter. I gotta make sure that we get this right and figure out how to message this correctly so she has a lower chance of developing these same sort of issues.
Yeah, we work really hard in our kitchen, around the table, when we go out to eat, when we talk about food. Energetically, I make a concerted effort around all three of our children and our friends and our family that it's a really positive environment around food. That food is, same with my philosophy line. Philosophy is a superfood line to make every food feel more high vibrational, happier. And that is the energy you bring to it. And no, not everything has to be a superfood. Not everything has to be super healthy, but it's the energy you bring to it. So if you're having an ice cream cone with your friends or with your family or your children, bringing that energy of positivity instead of shame and guilt, and that energy is what's going to be felt. And that's what I want our kids to always feel. I was confused about food as a kid. I didn't really know what I was supposed to feel and not feel. It was extremes. And just like everything in my life, my mom introduced a lot of extremes, and that didn't feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, we're in the season right now, right? You guys are eating meals with your family, you're planning meals, they're longer, they're bigger, you're all hanging out together, maybe going out for more ice cream, whatever that is. So important to get this right inside of yourself right now, so that as these things happen, you don't throw yourself back and forth on this pendulum swing so many of us have been down before, of going like, well, let me eat everything I want, or oh no, let me eat nothing, and let me,
punish and shame, and the whole cycle begins again. So we get into all of this. We give you some really thorough tips on how to get to an intuitive eating lifestyle and mindset. And we hope that you love it. And this is supportive. Maybe send it to a friend that you think could love it too.
Amen. See you on the other side.
Hello, everyone. We are back to the interview portion with our guest, Erin Treloar from Raw Beauty Talks. I'm so happy to have you today. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little tired. We were talking about before we even got started, the reality of juggling work and mom life and all the things, but I've had my water. I've had my smoothie. I've got my latte here. I'm ready to roll. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. What time is it for you?
It's 10. It's 10.
Oh,
it's not that early. Yeah.
We're
both on Pacific Standard Time. I'm in Vancouver, in Canada, but I come down to California all the time when the borders are open.
What'd you have in your smoothie this morning?
This morning I had spinach, maca, cacao, just like a bit of plain yogurt, and peanut butter. And I did this like kind of I think it's called the hedgehog smoothie out of the Juice Truck cookbook. And it's like chocolatey and delicious and kind of what I do when I need a little pick me up in the morning. That was the kind of day we're having.
Yeah. And then
so good though.
You have water, and then do you do smoothie then coffee, or coffee then smoothie?
So one of my like little guidelines for my overall wellness is to always have water before anything else that I put in my body. Like I want the coffee first thing when I get up, but if I do that, I just have this tendency to then not hydrate after. And then it's like all of a sudden 4:00 and I haven't had any water. It's the weirdest thing. For whatever reason, if I start my day with water, then I'm so much better about drinking it. I have this Swell bottle that keeps my water cold. So I'll often fill that up at night before I even go to bed. So it's just on my bedside table and so much easier to get down the hatch.
Well, don't you find that just cycles in general, and we're going to get into this in a deep way in a minute, but all cycles are kind of like that. Like if you start out the day eating a donut, I mean, for me, that's all I want all day. That's all I want. I want crap all day if that's what I start with. If I have like leftover pizza in the morning and I'm like, it's fine, I'm intuitively eating, like, and then it's just
this is what I want.
The rest of the day is shit. And like, same with water. It's like these habits, our positive habits can really like cycle us through this really positive place. And then our negative
all of those habits from thoughts. Like if we start out our day and we grab our phones right away and we start worrying and we get into our anxieties, it's just a cycle. It's like this negative cycle that it's, it's not impossible, but it's hard to get out of the more that we lean into those choices. And if we just start with positivity, a few simple positive thoughts, some water, it's easier to make smart choices.
Yes. And as you said, it's all about keeping things simple. I think when it comes to wellness, it can feel so overwhelming, especially when we're in a place where we're like a bit burnt out or anxious. I mean, I've felt all these things before, and it's like, okay, I've got to start working out and I've got to start having green juice and I've got to start drinking water and taking my supplements and meditating 20 minutes. And like, I should do the stretch sequence that girl over there is telling me to do. And it just gets so overwhelming. So I think for me, water first thing in the morning is just like, that's all I focus on. First thing in the morning is just get the water in. And then we kind of go from there. And it all starts to, as you said, flow more naturally from that space.
So we got right into your breakfast and your smoothie. I didn't even get to hear. I want you to introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell me what you do, what you love.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. I've been a fan of your podcast and your work for so long. My name's Erin. I'm a health coach. I'm a mom of 2 and the founder of a company called Raw Beauty Co., which exists to help women feel better in their body. And I have had a long struggle with figuring out my own relationship with my body. I developed an eating disorder when I was 15 that was not, it didn't start from some major traumatic event that happened. It was literally this 15-year-old girl flipping through magazines, going to dance class, looking at her body compared to the other girls and being like, okay, I'd like to lose a little bit of weight off my hips. So how do I do that? Okay, Health Magazine tells me I should do like 500 crunches a day and I shouldn't eat any fat, and just these little messages that I started picking up. And very quickly, what started out as a diet and trying to be healthy spiraled into this mindset where I couldn't stop counting calories. I was always thinking about food. I was always planning what my next meal was. I became very fearful of having my mom cook for us because what was she putting in it? I had to know every single little thing. And so I didn't have a lot of weight to lose. I'm 5'11", and I was 5'11" in grade 10 and, doing lots of sports. But the thing when you start to lose a certain amount of your body fat is your brain just can't function anymore. So then these intrusive thoughts start to come in. And I think sometimes people get confused and think that an eating disorder is a choice. Like she's choosing every time not to eat. And it absolutely didn't feel like that. I got to the point where I was like, I know I'm too skinny. I'm wearing 2 pairs of pants to school. I'm like cold all the time. I had to drop out of dance. And I just couldn't stop the thoughts that were commanding me not to eat and counting calories constantly. So I ended up in an incredible hospital program. That was the best thing that could have happened to me. It was obviously terrifying going in there and hard for our family, but it really allowed me to get back up to a healthy weight.
How old were you?
I was in between grade 11 and 12 when I went in there. And so it was like the summer of grade 11 and 12 should be these magical years. And here I was in this inpatient program. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what my weight was because that can be so triggering to people who are struggling with this type of thing. But I'd lost my period. I was growing hair on all parts of my body, which is a hormonal imbalance thing. They told me I would never be able to have kids. They told my mom and dad that at this state, I was the type of person who would likely be struggling with this for my whole life. And so I got out of the hospital program. I was at a healthier weight. I was able to think again. But I still didn't really understand how to nourish my body, and was still caught up in this game of looking a certain way. So then my disordered eating turned into kind of restrict a little bit during the day and eat healthy during the day. And then I would just binge at night. I would overeat when I was alone. If I was drinking, if I had a stressful day, it would be a whole box of cereal, maybe go through a drive-through, stop at the grocery store and get white buns and this type of food that I wouldn't normally eat. And followed by like crippling shame, guilt, all the tears, feeling so fat, feeling like nobody's ever going to like me like this. And the crazy part was, during all of this, I was like working at this cool restaurant in Vancouver, Cactus Club. I was, taking trips with my girlfriends to LA. On the outside, it all looked glossy and great, but I was just having like these moments by myself where I was so low, so low.
What ages was that period?
This is like my early 20s, the roller coaster of the early 20s.
I was in the exact same place in my early 20s, which is fascinating because 15 to 20, I want to say, lived the dream, lived the high school, no issues, no body issues, had no concept of, other than seeing movies. I didn't read magazines. I didn't look at People magazine. I didn't know what society was pushing down my throat. I was living in a small town in Maryland and we had one traffic light. Like, I don't know if I just lived in my own bubble and because my mom didn't look at those magazines, didn't have them around. I'm sure they were around. I'm sure when I went to get my eyebrows waxed, the magazines were there, but I don't remember looking at them. And so I didn't have a concept 15 to 20 of the way I should look. And I had an athletic build. I was a cheerleader. I played soccer. So I had like thicker thighs and I was healthy. I was really healthy. And, until I moved to LA, and then I was going to UCLA and I started all my friends were dieting. They grew up in LA. They had a different concept of what was beautiful. And, and I just fell into the trap and I began binging and starving myself all day, starting in college. So probably like 20 to 25, I kept that habit going. And same thing, I would drink with my friends and then it would just happen because we were all starving ourselves. And so we were hungry. And when we would drink, we're like, our bodies were like, I need some sustenance, girls. And
yes. And the alcohol like turns down the volume of that voice telling you not to. And it takes away some of the like inhibitions and just opens the gateway to it, but it is the worst feeling coming out of that. I mean, like the hangover combined with the food hangover. I'm so sorry you had to go through that because it feels like, now even scrolling Pinterest or Instagram, that those should be the glory years and like this incredible time. But I'm telling you now in my practice, like the number of girls who are truly struggling that nobody knows about it. It's all kind of secret and behind the scenes. It's outstanding. Like it's just, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
It's a real problem.
You and I were talking before this even started, and I was saying that this podcast we've had ignited, I want to say for 2.5 years, maybe a little bit more. And I've never really talked about any of this food stuff and this eating stuff. And I think that's really interesting. Like it just is its own thing. And I think, how could I have not, right? Like, how could I have not talked about this yet? It's such an important issue and something that was a huge part of my developmental years, 20 to 25. And so many women struggle with this. And yet I've never talked about it. Like, what is it, this huge chapter of my life that is the reason I probably have my superfood company, is the reason that I help so many women with intuitive eating, is the way that I came to the place I'm standing right here and now, and all that I'm sharing and all my gifts is a lot to do with that experience. And yet I've never talked about it at length on this podcast. And that says something. It in no way am I hiding it. In no way am I, afraid to talk about it. I think it's just not something that you think about to share because it's not talked about that often. Like it's
not. No, it's not. And I think that there's, we can say like, oh, I went through a stage where my eating was a bit distorted or where I didn't feel my best or where I was like struggling with anxiety and things. But to actually say, I used to binge eat in secret, nobody talks about that. There's so much shame around that. And and maybe not shame. Like for me, I just feel sad for my younger self that she was going through that. But it's not like, I mean, now we hear more and more people talking about, I had a miscarriage and nobody talks about that before, or I had an eating disorder, but getting down into the nitty gritty of what that actually looks like there's a lot of kind of darkness in there.
There is a lot of darkness in there. And it's so important to talk about. If there's one thing we love to talk about on this podcast, is that the darkness and the shadows is where the medicine is. And I think it's fascinating that our society, at least for me as a young girl, I didn't think I had an eating disorder. I knew something was wrong, but the only eating disorders, I was a psychology major. All I read about was bulimia and anorexia. So to me, I was like, oh, I'm just a normal LA girl in college. Everyone's doing this.
This is what we all do.
This is what we do. We're just dieting. We're going to live our lives like this, suffering, trying one diet, failing, quote unquote, trying another diet, failing, quote unquote, feeling malnourished, feeling starving, punishing myself, binging at night in secret, then punishing myself the whole next day by either starving myself and or working out for hours and hours, doing cardio to then be starving again and then binge again.
Oh my God. Yes. This is the cycle.
This is just what we do. Right.
Yeah.
And it's, as women, we minimize our issues. We minimize our own struggles, and there's so much shame and there's so much anxiety in that. And, I was like a mad woman. Like if I really think about, I wrote down every single calorie when I was trying to get clean, trying to heal myself. I was trying to build an awareness. And I actually learned about calorie counting through someone that I babysat for, because the mom kept a list. She was very healthy on the outside, seemed like she wasn't overly thin. She seemed really balanced, super smart. But there was, sometimes she would leave her notebook out when she'd leave, and I'd go babysit, and her notebook was every single thing she ate that day. Yeah. And I didn't really understand it, but I was like, oh, okay, well, she's really healthy and fit. She goes on jogs. She looks like she's got a healthy state of mind.
Yeah.
And I mimicked it, because we mimic what we want to reflect, and we learn what we learn through behaviors taught around us. And so that kind of went into my brain. And then I was like, oh, maybe that's the way out. Maybe that's the way out of this disordered body dysmorphia, thinking I'm fat all the time. It's crazy, because when I look back, I'm like, if I just would have on any given day been like, my body's perfect the way it is, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
But what you're saying is so important, because, two things that are coming to mind. First of all, I think a lot of people, as you said, your experience was they're in this cycle and they just think it's normal. They think this is life. This is how it's going to be. Until I lose the weight or have the perfect body, this is my path. And once I lose the weight, or once I get into that jean size, then I'll stop and it will all be good. And every piece of life will come together perfectly. So first of all, I just want to say, this is not fully living. It is a small box that you are in. So much of your mental real estate is being given to something that will never give you what you're truly looking for, which is love and happiness and a sense of content and feeling okay about yourself and your body. And it's not coming when you reach that weight. What happens when you reach the weight, because I've been there and clients have been there, is that you become obsessed with maintaining that weight, and you move the goalpost and you want to be smaller, or you want to be fitter, or you want your butt to look a bit different, or all of a sudden you're noticing the new wrinkle between your eyes, whatever it is. It's a never ending game.
From the moment I wake up till the instant I go to sleep, as most of you know, my day is crazy full. I often share my schedules on good old Instagram, but for those of you who don't know, I am running 3 inspiring businesses. I have 3 gorgeous children running around the house constantly. And in between helping them with school, creating alone time with the D, and also carving out some solo soul time for myself, there is basically no room left in the day for anything else. I really do know how it feels when I load up on unhealthy foods, and it's not a great look.
I don't have time to stress about these added fillers or sugars or whether my food will actually make me and my family feel good and be nutritious. And that's what I love about Philosophy Superfoods and why I started this company. I know that they are trustworthy, that they are packed with high vibe antioxidants, minerals, adaptogens that all help me deal with what the world throws at me each day. I love my life. I love my children and my jobs, and I want to be able to really thrive in all of these things and put on a bunch of different hats and roll with the punches. And Philosophy Superfoods really allows me and supports me in wearing all those hats. If you would like to stock up on our Philosophy Superfoods, which are always organic, raw, incredibly sourced nutrients, use the code IGNITED, that's IGNTD, to stock up for you and your loved ones. You and your body will feel so grateful for it.
There is another way. Like, it doesn't have to be this way, is what I want women to know. It doesn't have to be this way. And you can find a place where you feel like freedom around food and like you can eat intuitively, and where you're also feeling like your body is healthy. Because one of the biggest fears that I had was like this either or, like, if I stop the dieting and restricting and being so focused on this, I'm just going to gain 500 pounds and be like a version of myself that I'm not comfortable, truly and honestly, this is what I'm going to say, that I'm not comfortable being. And I felt like it was either or.
It was
like,
either
it
or.
doesn't have to be that way. There is another space. And obviously you've gotten there, and look what you've now created in your life by, transitioning out of that mindset. And then same for me.
I honestly forget. I've looked at, I think it has to do with my human design, but when I'm out of a certain phase, when I'm not in it anymore, it's hard for me to remember. Like, I can get there, but like, I'm just in the next phase. Like, I'm now an intuitive eater. That's just where I am. There is no past. Like, there are like kind of like PTSD moments when I remember, like I was away this weekend teaching, and I was in their wet sauna. And I used to work at Equinox during my time. I was a personal trainer during my worst kind of like the height of that working out cycle, binging at night. I'm not going to do it tomorrow. Today's going to be a better day. And I had this PTSD moment, and I just started crying in the sauna because about 15 years ago, that girl who was 21 sat in the sauna, just beating myself up and just being, you're so intimate with yourself. You're naked. You're in this wet sauna. And, that was like my ritual. I would go there after working out really hard, and I would be with myself, and it was quiet. And I would be like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I'm doing this to you. I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm not going to do it anymore. And I would promise myself, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then again, like, be there again. I'm like, I was just here. Why can't this sink in? What is wrong with me? And then that cycle of just guilt and shame and secrets. And I'm not going to do it tonight. And I'm not going to do it tonight. And I'm not going to do that tomorrow. And then again, and no one was talking about it.
No.
So it didn't seem, it wasn't bad enough that it was in my psychology book yet. I'm sure now, but like, it wasn't then. It was not talked about in the magazines. It wasn't sexy to talk about binge eating. It wasn't sexy to talk about standing in front of my fridge, a thin, fit, positive, happy woman standing in front of my fridge and freezer and eating it from top to bottom.
Yes.
And then doing that again 3 days later, and nobody was talking about it. So to me, I was just alone, pathetic, disgusting. And like, I had this dirty secret. Like, Adi didn't know. I would make sure there was no sign of that. Like, I would take the trash out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're hiding stuff at the bottom of the garbage. Yep. You're like driving down an alley to toss stuff out of your car, like all the things. It's so crazy. And you also, I feel like when you're in that stage, you think everyone else is just doing the dieting right. Like, everyone else can just diet, and I'm the only one who then ends up eating all the things. And so why can't I figure it out? I'm not disciplined enough. I just need the right plan. I'm somebody who can't eat carbs. I'm somebody who can't eat fat. I'm somebody who like not eating in the morning is best. I mean, it's endless. And the reality is that even though these diets might have some sort of impact on your physical form for a hot second, they're not generally, 98% of diets fail within a 2-year period of time. So they're not sustainable. I'm not going to say that
I never made it to 2 years. I was like,
oh God, nobody,
South Beach diet, 2 months at most.
Wild rose cleanse. And then like 4 days later, it would be like, you're eating all the things and you're like, how did I gain the weight back plus more every single time?
Totally.
So it's just this exhausting place to exist from, where it feels like no one else is going through it. And I would have moments where I would be doing better, and, depending on different relationships that I was in or how I was feeling about work or that type of thing. But I don't think there are 2 key factors. I was talking to one of my best friends about when this started to shift and change for me. And one of them was meeting my now husband, and he would just encourage me to eat. Like, he didn't know anything was going on, but he would be like, why aren't you having breakfast? That's not normal. Like, we're going to do a workout. You need to eat something. And he
being
was
around a man, a real man who takes care of themselves and just eats because they're hungry is so healthy. It's the most refreshing thing.
Exactly.
And on the flip side, being around women who all have eating disorders, like, I won't go to eat meals with women that don't enjoy food and don't have a healthy relationship anymore. I just can't. It's too, even now it's too triggering. I don't have the space for it. I'm like, I can't sit here and obsess over the menu with you. I'm eating whatever they put in front of me because food is beautiful, but it's, it's not that easy. So I do really want to spend a little bit of time here talking about how, I'm going to try and tap into that place of how we got from restrictive eating to intuitive eating, that space in between. I do want to say, I think Erin's speaking to this as well. It takes time. It isn't a fast cure. There isn't a Band-Aid. This is deep healing. This is a deep, healthy relationship with yourself that you're phasing into. You aren't just buying a book, prescribing to that method. This is an intuitive, connected. Intuitive means into. So yourself, you are connecting to your own rhythm, your own, your own hunger pains, your own appetite, your own like phases, just like the phases of your moon sign, of your period. Like, it's not going to be the same every day. You're not going to be able to write out the way you eat for anyone ever again. It's going to be an intuitive, solo, beautiful spiritual practice for you, but that takes time, just like any other spiritual practice would take. So let's take a little while and just talk about how you got from restrictive eating to, and like you said, it was like it took a few phases and you were kind of in and out of healthy, unhealthy. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, as you said so eloquently, this is a journey and it is going to take time. And for me, it really took 15 years, and there's elements of my wellness, like all of this is on a spectrum that I'm still refining and working on, and that we will forever be working on as our bodies shift and change. So it's not about landing at one specific diet that you're going to follow forever, because every day is different. Your body's always changing. For me, one of the key elements was getting help from individuals and professionals. So whether that was therapy, whether that was talking with a dietitian, one of the most pivotal practitioners that I ever worked with was a life coach who I met at a party. And I had no idea what a life coach was at that time, but I was so sick and tired of spending time digging around in my past, trying to figure out what had caused this. And coming up with really, like, as I said, no big traumatic event. It was a series of societal pressures and like a perfectionist nature that culminated into this perfect storm. And so what I loved about this life coach was she's like, we're going to look at really defining who it is that you want to be, what you want to create in your life, what would feel meaningful to you, what you want your space to feel like. And we're going to work towards moving towards that. So we're not going to spend a lot of time in the past. We're going to start moving you towards the present. And for whatever reason, that really clicked for me. So I made this vision board, which I have. It's right here. When I was 25, single, living in a basement suite in Vancouver, Scott, who's my husband now, and I had just broken up. I was on antidepressants. And I made this vision board as to what I wanted to create in my life. And that damn piece of paper on a Michaels frame was such a game changer for me. Another thing that was so helpful that she taught me was how to sit through and feel my feelings. I was somebody who had been running from my anxiety and the discomfort in my body. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't watch a TV show. I could barely be on my own. I was so uncomfortable in my body. And she taught me how to be okay being alone, how to feel.
No one teaches us that. No one teaches us that.
My favorite thing to teach women now. It's my favorite thing because it's so powerful. And yeah, you're right. Nobody teaches this stuff in school. And
our parents don't teach us. They're not like, I want you to sit in this feeling, honey. I mean, some parents might, and my goodness, nice work out there. But, I'm like a very mindful, aware person. I'm not coaching my kids in how to sit in their discomfort. I'm like, get over it. Stop crying, That's on a normal day. On a profoundly connected, day, then I'm like, oh, I hear that you're feeling sad about that thing. Let's keep talking. But it's hard. It's hard to do that. And so if I'm not doing that, I think it's just being able to sit in the discomfort is so much. And that's what we talk about in this podcast all the time, is just to just sit in the shit, sit in the discomfort, sit in the shit, roll around in it, smell it, be in it, be uncomfortable and stay. Don't run. Don't numb yourself. And that's a lot of what binging is we're numbing, we're distracting, we're escaping.
It's all it is. If you imagine these feelings wanting to bubble up within you, whatever it is. And sometimes people are scared to feel the feelings because they think I'm going to have to do something with it. I'm going to have to make this big life change. And I just want to remind you, sometimes it's just about feeling them. You don't actually have to do anything. So just sit in the shit, as you said, and feel it. But when you imagine these feelings bubbling up and you're binging, it is like you are stuffing the feelings down. It's like you are taking something physical, putting it in your body to just repress those feelings from coming up.
Yep.
And so that was honestly one of the most healing parts. And then really connecting to my body. I want to talk a little bit about these golden guidelines that I learned from a dietitian, Ali Eberhardt, that were really profound for me. So some golden guidelines for eating. And eventually, after following the golden guidelines, I was able to start tuning into my hunger and fullness levels. So because for so long I'd been ignoring my body's innate hunger and fullness cues, I was like, no, you're not hungry right now. You're not eating right now. No, I don't care if you want that. I don't care if you're having a hard time thinking. We're doing this and this is the plan. So I had tuned those hunger and fullness signals out for so long that I couldn't hear them anymore. So this is really common. And so that's where these golden guidelines from Ali Eberhardt are so beneficial, because it allows your body to start trusting you again. Yeah. So often we're in a space where we're like, my body's not right. My body's not doing what I need it to do. My body's ugly. My body's gross. My body's broken. Really, from the moment you were born, your body has been working so hard to not only help you survive, but to thrive in life. It is constantly sending you messages all day, every day to try and keep you alive. And we just have to tune back into that and start listening to our body. Now, if some of those communication pathways are broken, we're going to actually have to build back the trust of our body before it's going to feel comfortable speaking to us again. So that's where the golden guidelines come in, is that we're going to actually nourish and feed your body so that it starts to trust that it gets what it needs. And then when it starts to trust you, you'll notice all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, wow, my stomach's grumbling. Like I'm actually hungry right now. And wait, I'm full or I'm satiated. So I actually feel like I could stop eating right now. And all of a sudden you're in this space where you're intuitively eating and it all feels so simple because you've gone back to the space that we were all born from. Like a baby doesn't.
It's basic.
No.
A baby doesn't overeat.
No. It stops when it's full. It cries when it's hungry. Yeah. And it's all like pretty simple and straightforward. So we just need to kind of unlearn a bunch of things and go back to those basics.
Yeah. And something else that just came up for me as a parent, you're around the whole spectrum of parents and the way they let their kids eat. And I think one of the greatest gifts you can give your child, boy or girl, is that food freedom, is not putting your own restrictions and your crap and your energy and your weight. Yeah. Literally that energetic weight around food, that is yours. Don't give that to your kids. No. Don't freak out. Don't show them your food fear. Don't, you work through your own stuff. But if you're not at a point yet that we're talking about where you're like really on this journey, eating intuitively, beware, be careful not to show that stuff to your kids. And once you are at a great place, then not to, you can see even in little kids that are restricted. Like I go to birthday parties sometimes and these parents that restrict their children and they're like, no, no white sugar, no this and that, no gluten. Like they don't even have gluten allergies. Like, what are we doing here to our children? Like, and these kids are out of control eating, they're binge eating. Yes. Why are they binge eating? Because you are restricting them. You are restricting your child. That is abuse. That is abuse. I'm sorry, but you're putting your child, sorry, not sorry. You are putting your child through a traumatic experience against their will. There is no worse time that I've been through than when I was binge eating and restricting. That was the worst time. That was the worst time. And these parents that are doing that, if you're one of these parents, take a look at yourself and really ask yourself what it is you're doing.
Yeah. The intention is always pure and good. They're like, the parents have learned the same lessons that diet culture teaches everyone, which is like sugar is evil and gluten is evil. And your kids are going to have ADD if they eat any of these things because they can't process and handle it. I mean, the messaging that we all receive is just, it bombards everything and it's fear-based. It's fear-mongering. Yeah. So these parents, they're thinking that what they're doing is the best for their child, but what ultimately ends up happening is a lot of fear, restriction, beliefs around food, and that start to feel imprisoning. So if you're in that space as a parent, there are so many wonderful dietitians. Shanna Spence is amazing. Jen Messina has 2 kids, and she talks a lot about like creating healthy boundaries around food with kids. And I've had a great conversation on our podcast with her where she shared some awesome tools as well for parents. And we just have to remember this is a learning experience. But you're right. Binging is a symptom of restricting. We don't binge if there's no restriction. So a lot of people think I just got to get the binging under control. What actually needs to get under control is the restricting.
100%. And this can even be
restricting. The binging will stop.
Yep. It can even just be in your head, the restricting in your head. You could maybe not even, but just even the thought of that thing is bad. That thing is, I'm not allowed to have that. If you tell me I can't eat strawberries for 2 months, that is all that I'm going to want.
Exactly. The most addictive type of food isn't sugar or carbs. It's the food you told yourself that you can't have.
Exactly.
Always. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's scary though for people to start down this journey because they're like, okay, but if I just give myself full permission, I'm just going to eat everything and I'll never stop.
100%.
The reality is that you will stop. You will stop. And you might at first go a little crazy because you're being restricting. But I love, I think it's Allie again who says, if you were to hold your breath for a really long time and then you were to just take a deep breath in, we don't call that binge breathing.
Yeah.
You're just catching up on what was being held back.
Yeah.
So it's like, you might go eat a bunch because in some capacity of being holding your breath for a long time.
We're recalibrating. And the pendulum is swinging one way and then it swings the other way. And then you've got to eventually look at a pendulum.
Yes.
It'll figure itself out. And you have to be willing. This is a huge part to it, is the trust, your trust muscle. You have to be willing to fall, to make mistakes, to have a whole pie of pizza to yourself. And you'll wake up the next day and you'll learn some lessons, and there'll be gifts in those lessons, and the pendulum will continue to swing. I can promise you, you will not eat a whole pie of pizza for the rest of your life, because eventually it will get old. It'll get old and you will get tired of it, and your body will start to learn that this human is no longer controlling my calories. I don't need to hold on anymore. And it begins to let go of the weight. It begins to let go of fat that you don't need. It stops holding on because you are not controlling anymore. So this is a huge trust exercise. And that space in between that we're talking about, between the restrictive eating and the intuitive eating, yes, there's a big wide open area, and it's not restricted, and you're not in some small fenced in area with huge boundaries. You're not. It's way more free, and that can feel scary. And that's normal. Sit in that discomfort, sit in that fear, sit in the uncomfortability, because sitting in that is way better than being in a restricted place, and you are on your way. You are on your way. And if it feels scary because you've got zero restrictions, then you are in a great place to be. And you can come to us. You can come back to this podcast. Stay on the path. Keep connecting with yourself. How does this make me feel? What am I feeling? Connecting with the feelings. And it's a cycle, just like anything else. And it will lead to more and more positive, positive things in your life, positive practices, and just keep leaning into that.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I hope that anybody right now who's listening, who's like, oh my God, they're talking about me. This is literally what I do. Come send us a DM, shoot us a message. I'm on @RawBeautyTalks on Instagram. And I just want you to know you're not alone. There are so many other women who are going through this as well. And it doesn't have to be like this. And the more that, your mental space isn't taken up by food and the exact weight on the scale of your body, the more space you'll have to do the things that will really light you up, to dive into your career or your family or your friendships and building relationships that are meaningful. And that's the space that I want to see every woman living from.
I feel like your life coach that helped pivot you, I feel like what she was doing was giving you control of other parts of your life. And instead of this focus, because the problem with this is that we get so stuck in controlling our food, our calories, what we are eating, what we're not eating, that it becomes all encompassing. It's completely consuming our brain, our hearts. You can't stop thinking about food. You wake up anxious about it. You go to sleep disgusted and guilty about it. Like, it's an all day thing. I cannot believe the amount of minutes of my life I spent thinking about food. It makes me sick.
Yeah.
Thinking about how much time I wasted. And there were lessons and there were growth. And that's why I am so grateful for this way of eating and being and living now. But I feel like if you're in this place that we've been talking about, truly, like maybe you can't afford a life coach. The medicine is in sitting in the discomfort and also starting to just move your attention to other things, growing, reading books that interest you, getting lost in an amazing novel, volunteering. One of my favorite things to do. And in college, I would forget about my own problems every time I would volunteer. And there are so many ways to volunteer. In person, virtually, be coaching someone for free, coaching a little girl. Like, there are so many ways to heal and to and take this pain you're feeling and transform it into something else. And it's a distraction, yes, but it's a healthy distraction. It's a healthy habit. And if you can just figure out what it is you love, just like that coach asked Erin, where do you want to be right? What does your space want to feel like? What would make you feel good in this moment? Where are your feelings? Just connecting to more of what you want in your life that can be really inspiring and motivating to think about what's next. What's the next version of you look like? And that was really big for my own healing, was seeing that next version of who I'm going to be. Yeah, like I'm going to be, and maybe it was finding a photo of myself at a happy time.
Yeah.
And being like, I want to be that version of who I was again. I was so free on the beach that day, or whatever it was. And just having a visualization and holding space for what's possible.
Yeah. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. It is. Some people are really great at it and they find a lot of comfort in that space. And then there are a lot of people who are like, that's terrifying to me. I don't want to say where I want to be because I'm probably going to fail and I probably won't be able to get to it. And I don't actually know how I would get to it, which is really interesting because my mind doesn't work that way at all. And so working with clients where they're like, I'm scared of even saying this out loud has been really eye-opening to me, to kind of identify some of the fears and beliefs that women have about themselves deeply, and the trust that they have in the overall universe or whatever it is that's greater than them. And so another whole piece of this story is our mindset and working around our beliefs that we have about ourselves. And that's a whole nother podcast episode, but
absolutely.
I mean,
yeah. And just, I think kind of really quickly going through just self-love and just like a child just loves themselves.
Yeah.
Like just coming back to that purity. We don't have to overthink it. Just like having water in the morning can just create a healthier mindset for the rest of the day and healthier habits. How can we just love ourselves because we're a human being and because there's only one of us? Mm-hmm. And just coming back to that very basic, like, what would you tell your child? What would you tell that younger version of yourself? You know, how would you speak to your best friend? Like just speaking to yourself that way. And that's a really simple way to come to a practice of self-love without getting too woo-woo. That can be really healing. And that voice that we speak to ourselves with, I mean, the way I used to talk to myself when I would eat something that was, quote, bad, like, I can't believe I spoke to myself that way. Mm-hmm. I cannot believe that I let myself speak to myself that way. Yeah. And it's no coincidence that I was in destructive relationships. I was letting myself be abused. I was letting it's all connected. Everything's connected. And if you're letting yourself speak to yourself that way, and if you're in an unhealthy relationship with yourself, then of course you're going to let in other unhealthy relationships.
Absolutely. You nailed it. And I remember going through this, like, I had postpartum anxiety. So I was doing some therapy around that and having this like esoteric moment where I was like, what even is self-love? Like, what is this woo-woo concept that people are talking about? And so we were working through that a lot. And it kept coming back to my marriage and this idea that, you know, when you first meet your life partner, it's like the stars and the, like, all the feelings, but over time you might have those feelings come back in like dips, but over time, the love that you build in a marriage or with a long-term partner, it requires work. Like you have to know that person. You have to understand what works for them. You have to be able to communicate with them. You start to know like what foods they like, you know, what shows they enjoy, you know when to speak up and when to kind of like stay quieter. And so if we can look at self-love as this relationship that we have with ourselves, of this journey of getting to know ourselves and what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and honoring the things that work for us. So if we're somebody who's introverted, giving ourselves some space to recharge. If we're extroverted, making sure that we have that space to be with friends. If we find out and discover that our greatest passion in life is making pottery, can we honor that in some capacity? So 100%. To me, self-love is more than just a feeling, this fleeting feeling. You know, you can't wait every day to wake up and hope that all of a sudden you love yourself. You've got to start showing up and acting in love with yourself as you would in another relationship. And slowly over time, that love is going to become stronger and sturdier and more long lasting. And so that's what self-love really is to me.
Yeah. I agree. We ask all of our guests 5 questions.
Okay.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, God, that's the hardest question ever. I mean, one that I always go back to is hold the vision and trust the process. And that one really helps me out when things aren't going the way that I hoped, which is all the time in life, right? Like I'm always holding the vision of exactly how I want the business to be. And then one thing's working and the other thing's like going in the complete other direction. So it's trusting that this is all part of the process and learning the lessons from that.
Yep. Very in line and on brand for our conversation today, right?
Totally.
Holding the vision of I will have a healthy relationship with myself, my body, and food. Holding that vision and then trusting the ride and that process as long as it takes, even if it's a lifetime.
Yeah.
Just holding the vision. I will be in a place where I love myself, I love my body, and I love eating food in a healthy, balanced way. And just holding that and just trusting. Everything else is a gift. Everything else is a lesson. There's nothing bad. There's nothing wrong. Just trusting. What has been one of your most proud moments to date?
Oh, having my kids, hands down. Yeah. Yeah. Having my kids and trying to figure out and learn how to be a mom and navigating that whole journey. Absolutely. Hands down. No question.
Ditto. What has been your hardest moment?
Postpartum anxiety, because
with both?
Just with the second, at about the 8-month mark, I had like a late onset postpartum. And that was 2 years ago. Like, I still get emotional talking about it, because what happened was I just got so depleted trying to work and parent both kids. And we were renovating at the time, and all systems, my nervous system just completely broke down. And for the first time since having my eating disorder, I started to have those intrusive thoughts again. But this time it was all about the fact that I wasn't meant to be a mom, that I should leave my family, which, if you know me, just like is so not aligned with who I am or how I think. But I was so sick that my mind was not in the right place. So that was the first time I have ever thought, this is so painful. Like, I don't think I can keep doing this. And that was really scary. So I started taking anti-anxiety medication, which was like a huge decision to go on that. And I'm still taking it now. Even though I feel like 100% back to my normal self, I'm like, not wanting to rock the boat in 2020 to go off of it. So we're just maintaining the course. But I'm totally fine now. It was just terrifying. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I can completely relate 100%. It's also interesting that society labels what you went through as late onset. Like, you had to put a label on it. You're like, I know it's,
I even want to. Yeah.
I'm like, that's exactly when that happens, because that's when the baby's moving and active and then becoming a person and has all these needs. When they're newborns, you're just like, they just sleep. If you're a sleeper, it's like, the baby becomes a baby and has all these needs, and you've got another toddler running around, and you've run a business.
And I'm like breastfeeding. My body is just has nothing left to give it.
Nothing left to give.
It's like, you're out of here. We're shutting you down.
You're done. Closed for business.
Closed for business. I was, yes.
So, I mean, we always ask our guests about your self-care practices. Is there anything that you just, I mean, it sounds like right now part of that is just honoring where you're at and taking anti-anxiety medicine, which I think is just like anything else we're talking about here, just releasing the taboo. There's nothing wrong with medicating. We all need medication at different times in different forms. Yeah.
I mean, I am the queen of self-care at this point in my life. I come from a long line of anxious individuals. So just genetically, I need it in order to survive in this world. And I'm so passionate about my work. I'm not giving that up. So like, I have to make space for self-care. And in my mind, for years, I was like, I exercise, I nourish my body, I take my omegas, I meditate, like blah, blah, blah. And so for me, it was really hard to start taking the anti-anxiety medication. And I had to come to peace and come to terms with the fact that anti-anxiety medication is another tool. that we have in our toolbox. And sometimes we have to use that so that we can get out of bed and actually do the meditation and actually feed ourselves and actually like be able to go for a walk or a run or do yoga. So that was actually really groundbreaking in my own practice, and really understanding the power that both Eastern and Western medicine have when they come together, and we use them all in conjunction. Is it something I'll be on for the rest of my life? I don't know. I was planning on going off in January, and then COVID hit, and we're having a cultural revolution, which I just like found was bringing up so much emotion for me. And so it just didn't feel like the right time. It just didn't feel like the right time.
Take your time. And that's, you're practicing what you preach, right? I tell our clients all the time, and our followers and our loved ones, there's no rush.
There's no rush. Yeah. So in the meantime, I'm drinking water. I don't drink a lot of alcohol. I don't restrict anything though. So like, I don't even cut alcohol out. It's just it doesn't really work that well with my body. I take supplements. I meditate. I love gua sha massage on my, like the facial massage. On all of these things are just like beautiful gifts that we can give to ourselves. The real self-care for me though is always like, it's the therapy and the coaching and the podcasts and the reading and the journaling and that deeper inner work. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then last but not least, this podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you?
Oh, this work, helping women find a place where they feel comfortable, aligned, and confident in their body so that they can take the attention and focus that they've been putting on food in their body and place it into something that I know will just light them up 1,000 times more. And so I do this group coaching program called the Raw Beauty Reset, which is a 12-week program that really teaches you those golden guidelines of nourishing yourself, how to tune back into your hunger and fullness levels. The 4 pillars of the program are nourishment, mindset, movement, and self-love. And so we really, my goal for everyone in that is to learn tools and have aha moments that will deepen their relationship with themselves, that they can carry with them through their entire life. And I thought a lot about when I was creating it, the time that I was in my 20s when I was going through all of this and like working at Cactus Club and trying to hustle and like so much debt on my credit card. So it was really important for me to price it at a place where I was like, anybody can make this work. It's accessible to everyone. I want that girl who's like, I actually don't have any money, but I need this to be able to get in and afford it and get that support. So
beautiful.
That's what lights me up. That and my family.
I love it. I love it. Well, we'll put a link in the show notes to that. And thank you so much for sharing your heart today and for breaking open, this subject that I can't believe we haven't talked about yet on here, but now we have. And I hope that for anyone listening, that if you are resonating with anything here specifically, that you tag both of us and tell us what that aha moment was, what's resonating. And, thank you so much for being here. Hope you have the most beautiful day.
Thank you for creating this space and for sharing a piece of your story. I know it will help so many people. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.